like sands through the Aya waste. This is the Wheel of Time.
Hi, and welcome to the first episode of As the Wheel Turns. I'm Laurel Sedai.
And I'm Al Dave Mancarbino. I'm a first-time reader.
And I'm a first-time rereader. And we are here just to do a fun show talking about Wheel of Time as my husband reads it for the first time. Talk about the show, which is about to air its third season, and have some fun. So welcome aboard.
Book talk.
So Dave has read the first three books, started on the fourth. I've obviously read them all, but we're going to talk about today the first three, favorite characters, moments, sequences, and I'll try to intersperse some of my perspective as a rereader, as it's a very different experience than the first time you read it. So we'll start off with Eye of the World. One of the main criticisms that I've read about the book is that it's sort of a standard fantasy quest. Did you feel like that when you were reading it?
I felt like that for the first half of the book, and then as we got towards the end, you started to feel like we were going in a different direction. That they were going into different groups, going off doing different things, and making it a little more interesting than the standard, Lord of the Rings type fantasy quest.
No hate to Lord of the Rings, because we love Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely.
But one thing that is nice about Wheel of Time that you don't see in Lord of the Rings, and it's probably a factor in that it's written in a very different time, is that Lord of the Rings features a lot more female characters, and they're female main characters who have personalities and missions and strengths and skills. Out of the females from the first book, do you feel like there's one particular character that kind of stood out to you the most, that you were excited to see where they were going?
So just to start, there being strong female characters is a little bit different than some fantasy, where the female characters are just sort of there. They don't necessarily have any strength behind them. I think Egwene was a more interesting, more round character. And because Nynaeve is great too, but she sort of flashes as one thing. She seems to be angry most of the time.
Yeah.
While Egwene is interesting to see her more varied emotions.
Yep. Okay.
That's interesting.
Did you feel like were you surprised by how it went? I mean, I know the first time I read Eye of the World, the end sequence was confusing to me. The second time, less confusing. But do you feel like it left you kind of surprised at how it went? Because obviously you've seen the show. I should mention that. You've watched the show. Yeah. Very different. Anything in particular about the first book that you... how it ended, how did you feel when it got to the end?
The first thing is just that I came from watching the show. So all my thoughts and thought of where we were going were dictated by what the show showed me.
Yeah.
Which therefore, about halfway through the book, I realized was not the case of where I should be looking. That obviously is its own entity, its own thing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting, and the end was a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't what I was expecting to see happen. But overall, I think I got the main plot points and the main gist of it, but I did find it more interesting and have more depth than the show's
sure, yeah. And a lot of it's kind of a read and find out thing, which is something it's hard to learn when you're reading the books. You're like, oh, what does that mean? And it's like, well, just wait, you'll read more and then you'll find out. So
yes.
Any favorite part of Eye of the World?
I think that the Black Wind thing was really interesting in the book. Much more interesting in the book than it was on the show. I felt like you actually, and I also when I did a lot of the audiobooks, and she did an amazing job of sort of speaking
Rosamund
that.
Pike. Yeah.
So I thought that was probably much more moving, probably because of the reading.
Yeah.
But that was something that was very interesting to me about the first book.
Okay.
That I wasn't expecting.
Okay. I have to say, as a rereader, the sequence with the Green Man was much more emotional to me. I liked it the first time, but maybe because I wasn't worried about what was going to happen next, I really was kind of that struck me emotionally this first reread. So it was great.
That's great. Great scene.
Book 2.
So let's move on to The Great Hunt. I know that it's been a little while since you've read that, so it's hard to... They kind of blend together, but if you want to kind of take off with what you liked about it.
Well, I liked the Sha Chen storyline much more than I liked on the show. I like the animals that were involved in it, and is it Turok, that fight that they have with the sword?
Yep.
That was really interesting, him fighting a much more seasoned person who has much more experience.
Because you got to
was it-
see,
yeah.
Lan train him a little
Yes.
bit, which we didn't get in the show because it, obviously it deviated from the books and that everyone separated. But so it was cool to see that.
Absolutely,
that
I agree with
battle.
you.
Yeah. One of the other things too is the Ingtar kind of revealing himself as a dark friend. They didn't. I hate to keep going back to the show, but they didn't get to really do that in there.
No, and I think that was really
did that surprise you?
It surprised me. It felt like a real missed opportunity
Yeah,
for the show to use
I
that
know,
plot point to go
but
somewhere.
it's kind of nice to have a twist in the book
Absolutely.
that you weren't expecting as a show watcher.
Oh, absolutely.
It kind of catches you off guard. What did you think about that battle in the sky that happens in Falm?
I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a much more interesting way of putting that than it was sort of showcased on the show.
Yeah,
I thought that it made more sense to me compared to that weird
it's kind of trippy though, and when I read it, I thought I don't know how they're ever going to show this on TV.
It makes sense why they didn't do
Yeah.
that in the show, but the rooftop thing on the show was just very different from that.
Yeah,
So,
and Matt blowing the horn,
yes,
always epic.
yes. As interesting in the book as it was on the show. Because on the show, I thought they did a really good job.
It's very
of that,
cool,
so.
and you're obviously you get to see see some of the names of the heroes of the horn, see how people kind of witness it, and say wait, did I see Arthur Hotwing? So very, very cool.
Definitely, I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
A cool part of that book.
Yeah.
So.
Book 3.
Now we're moving on to the Dragon Reborn, which is the last one you've finished.
Yes.
Everything kind of ramps up a bit.
For sure.
We'll kind of break it down by character. Perrin, they have that great attack on the camp from the Trollocs, and he communicates with the wolves, and they, that great line, "We come, brother," that second time around still gave me goosebumps.
Yep.
We also saw him meet Fael,
Yes.
which is a very important relationship for him. Then we got our first Matt perspective chapters.
Yeah, and that's funny because Matt, I really disliked on the show. Didn't kind of dislike, really disliked on the show, and I think he may be my favorite character, having the book and reading from his perspective.
Yeah. That does a lot for his character.
And the arc's just different. The arc, maybe because of the weird stuff with the show, with replacing the actor and this and that, definitely slowed it down. But having his perspective has been really important, and it sort of has shaped the rest of the characters.
Yeah. And you got your first chance to hear him say, I'm no hero, and here I am going to go run in and do a heroic thing, which is one of the main features of his character.
Even when he went into the rock or whatever,
into the Stone of Tyr.
Yeah, he was doing that. That clearly was something well beyond what someone would do.
And then we can't leave out the girls and their hunt for the Black Aja, which is very exciting. Kind of a story that's going to continue on for a while, as you can imagine, but fun to see their relationship develop and change as they get older, and Egwene tries to kind of assert her independence when Nynaeve still sort of treats her like a little girl.
And all that stuff is very, very interesting. And and Elaine being a much more thoroughly thought out character in this, much more introduced character than in the show. As of right now. This is a much more interesting. Also, the Emerald Seat, all the stuff with her, there's much more of a depth to that relationship that doesn't involve what's her face,
Moraine.
Yeah, it doesn't involve Moraine. What's her face? But it doesn't involve Moraine, and we sort of see her relationship with the girls, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
And one more fish reference.
I know there's a lot of the fish. The fish metaphor is
strong.
Is strong.
Yeah.
So now we are at. You're starting Shadow Rising, the best book in the series by far. So with the show coming up, kind of the pressure's on because you got to read it. I think
I'll get through it before we see the show. We got what 2 months?
We have some time. So so we'll on the next episode hopefully talk about that, and maybe Fires of Heaven, depends on how far we get. So we'll see.
Go from there.
More fun stuff.
So we got some exciting news this past weekend that season 3 of The Wheel of Time, which we knew was coming, will be released officially on March 13th, which is only 3 months away, which is pretty bonkers. We got a 1-minute teaser trailer, which you almost didn't watch because you were afraid of spoilers, but the fact that it moves so rapidly, it's hard to pick anything out, but very exciting. And so that's coming up. We've got Jordan Con in April. Now, I've
Yes.
gone once, and as an introvert, going by myself was a big leap. So this time around, I'm making you go with me, which I think will be fun.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome show, but
I'm a little more extroverted. So.
you're much more extroverted than me. So we might be in costume. We've discussed it. We'll see.
There have been some discussions.
We'll see what happens with that. And then the other piece of news we got, is that Brandon Sanderson, Dragonsteel, is releasing a leather hardbound version of The Eye of the World, and then we'll be releasing the rest of the books in leather hardbound, over the next 14 years, I guess. We'll be broke for the next decade plus, pretty much. So that's exciting.
That's super exciting.
Super exciting. So, thank you for coming along with us. We're new to this media. I don't know, but hopefully we'll do some more of these. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this and give us some feedback, and we'll see from there.
That's that.
So thank you so much.
Toodaloo.